Well, today I wanted to talk about something that is unfortunately not spoken about very often when we talk about studying abroad. A lot of people talk about picking a destination based on the things that you want as an individual, but not necessarily taking into account something that I'm going to talk about today. This is something very important because for us specifically, it's going to be really important when it comes to Cote d'Ivoire. And that element that we all need to take into consideration is the politics. The politics at your destination. It's all well and good to pick a country because it's great weather, because, there's free healthcare or all these good things, right? But what about the politics? I know as a foreigner, usually as an immigrant, we don't get involved, right? It's usually talked that okay, you go into a new country, you don't get involved, you don't talk about politics or anything like that, which is okay, which is an okay advice. However, just because you don't talk about it and you're not involved doesn't mean that you shouldn't be aware of what's going on. And I think that with the recent election in France, I think was it last year? And the huge surge of the far right party and movement and all of that was a little bit of a wake up call. So we all know that, most of Europe is having that far right wave more than ever, right? And so what do you do about it? First of all, you have to be aware of it. It's not just about saying, well, I want to go to Portugal, I want to go to France because, well, it's this and that, they have this kind of visa and a lot of black people are going there. Yeah, okay. But what does it mean for the country? How is the climate like really in the country? Not for you necessarily as an immigrant or the type of immigrant that they like to have, but the general climate in the country, how is it like? And not that you need to get involved because, usually as an immigrant, you don't get involved until it concerns you. And now you're like, okay, I need to pay more attention to this thing. So being aware of, okay, who is governing the country? Is it a monarchy? Is it a republic? Being aware of this. This is just the basics, okay? Knowing who the president is, who is the, if they have a counselor, if they have a president, knowing that, knowing the parties, knowing if they have what kind of, the equivalent of the Congress, for example, and Senate. If it's governed mostly, if the conservatives have majority or minority, and knowing that the terms conservative and liberal are different from the terms that we use here. Just because you say conservative here in the US doesn't mean conservative in Canada or in France or in Spain or everywhere else, right? So just because you hear those terms doesn't mean that it means the same thing, okay? Just because you hear Communist Party in France doesn't mean that it doesn't have the same connotation as a communist here in the US, okay? So you have to know these things. You have to understand the history of the country, and in terms of politics, what could be seen as a shock and what could be seen as, well, it is what it is, right? That's just how it is. It's something that could not be, that could be a little shocking here in the US, but in other parts of the world, it's pretty common. It's pretty common to have Communist Party that have a big part of government, right? But here in the US, it's like, oh my goodness, communist, what? Right? So being aware of these things before you go, so that you're not surprised, so that you're not, shocked by certain things, right? So how do you prepare for these things? You want to be able to watch the news. But again, I don't want you to watch American news about Europe or about your destination, about Mexico or about Panama or wherever you want to go, but watch local news from these countries. What are they talking about in their local daily news, right? What are they talking about? What are the main concerns in those countries when it comes to corruption, when it comes to inflation, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to insecurity, when it comes to all these things? Because we've seen it from the outside, right? And we've seen it from an American point of view. So, hey, Jackie, how are you? Good to see you. And so, how are they seeing themselves? How are they seeing their current situation? Because the way we see our current situation here, politically, we're like, okay, I'm out, right? But what are they saying about their own situation? Or just like European looking at us here in the US, it's not the same thing as us looking at ourselves, right? So your point of view, I mean, your subjective, your own person, right? So you're going to have a subjective viewpoint, but try as much as possible to look at their own situation. How are they evaluating their economy? What are the things that are important for them? For example, in France, why is it that people strike like at least once a month? Okay, I'm exaggerating, but why is it so important for French people to go on strike? And why is it important for you to have an understanding of this is just a part of historically that's how it is, right? To be French is to be able to go on strike and to ask for your rights because it goes back centuries and centuries. That's just how it is. And so for you not to complain because it's not convenient for you to to take the subway because there's no subway today, you can't get to work. Sure, it's inconvenient, but you have to have an understanding of why this it's the case. And then okay, that explains why school is free, why you can have free healthcare, why you can have free this and free that. Well, it's because they fight so much about these things. All right. So yes, it's inconvenient, but you can still enjoy the perks of all that fighting. You understand what I'm trying to say? So have an understanding of the politics in the country you're going to. How are minorities treated? Because you're coming in as a Black person, more than likely, but you are a foreigner. You're an quote unquote expat. Like I said earlier, you're like the good immigrant, right? But what about the not so welcome immigrant? How are they treating those immigrants, right? And so it's all well and good to be in your little bubble, but we have to be sensitive towards, okay, what is the attitude and what is our role to play in this whole, movement, right? And so I believe that we need to be aware of these things. I'm not saying that you're going to have to play a role in politics in those countries. No, you're a foreigner, right? But you have to be aware of these things. You have to be aware of government. You have to be aware of, okay, this is troublesome, or this is okay. What is the trend? That's what I'm trying to say. What is the trend? Is it trending towards left? Is it trending towards center? Is it trending towards right? And what does it mean for you as an individual? What does it mean for the society as a whole? And so that you are aware of that. And if anything pops, you need to be ready as well. If something pops, are you close to the embassy? Are you able to just book a flight and leave, right? You need to have that money saved up anywhere you go. It doesn't matter if the most quote unquote peaceful country in the world, you need to have some savings ready just in case something pops, because you just never know. In the world we live today, I don't have to tell you that. You already know that you just never know, something could happen. You could be on an island somewhere. What are you going to do if there's only like one flight every other day? How are you going to, you know, to figure things out for, like, how are you going to be able to sustain yourself for 2 days until you can get to the airport or until you can get on the flight abroad? Okay, so knowing how to prepare yourself, knowing the situation. Like I said, for Cote d'Ivoire, for example, it's an election year like this year, and so we have to be wise about it and see, okay, observing, okay, how are the parties at play talking right now? How is the vibe? How is there tension? Is there not tension? Like, how are things going right now? And listening to their speeches as well. That's something that you can do. You can go on YouTube and listen to the speeches. Like, what are the different political parties talking about? And how does that concern you? All right. So being aware of these things, very few people will talk about that. And I don't even know if people talk about that. Like, we like to talk about the positive and not that this is negative, but we like to talk about let's just go and have fun and, we'll be good type thing. But we have to be aware of these things. We have to be aware of the societies we are entering into, and what is the political, social, cultural, all of those climate of these places that you are going into. So you're not just going there blindly and then you are shocked or, by certain things that are happening. But you really have to be able to do that kind of research as well, not just about the cost of living and where can I get my hair product and where can I get good apartments and where can I get my driver's license. Yeah, those are great things, but definitely do the research and get to know the history of the country and also the relationships between the US and these countries. Like when the US, how is the US treating these countries? Do they have long relationship from centuries ago, or do they have tensions right now, or they used to and now they're good, or understanding the relationships that our countries have, that the US has with the country of interest. Okay, so because again, it might just take one speech from somebody and then things pop. And when you find yourself as the foreigner in certain places, sometimes you could be a victim because you're the representative of the US. You're the American. And so how likely is it that things can turn sour because you are happen to be an American somewhere where all of a sudden they don't like Americans? Okay, so not to scare you or anything like that, but just to add into the research that you're already doing when it comes to cost of living, when it comes to school, when it comes to safety. Add that, add the political climate as well. Look years ago how things have changed, where things are going. Watch the local news, read the local newspaper, and look at what people are saying in politics when it comes to their relationship with the US and how their country is going overall, if there's a lot of social unrest or anything like that. All right, so I hope this was helpful. Again, I just wanted to share something that we really don't hear about in these move abroad conversations, and I hope you can take the time to do your homework and educate yourself about these things as well. All right, any questions that you may have for me, let me know in the comments and I'll be more than happy to come back and answer those questions. All right, enjoy the rest of your day and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you, Efri.